Anderson. This is Gruen Nation, a show about electile dysfunction. We'll meet our panel in a moment, but first, what did we learn this week? We learnt that despite what some people may think, the sun doesn't shine out of Tony Abbott's arse. And here's photographic proof. That's a side effect of a suppository of wisdom. We learnt that the Rudds recycle, with Kevin and daughter Jessica managing to make not one but two shirts from the same tablecloth. I'm told at home they wear matching snuggies. And we learnt that although Tony has 3 daughters, Queensland MP Wyatt Roy is still hoping he might one day have a son. Or at least adopt one. Dr. Evil called. He wants his mini-me back. Kevin continued to ask the public for help. Volunteering is a key plank in Labor's election platform, but the call-out doesn't always work.
How good is it to be out on a Sunday morning with a big group of strong Labor supporters and volunteers campaigning here at Maroubra?
Are you in, Peter? No. That video was posted on YouTube on June 19. 7 days later, Garrett quit politics. Might have been the slogan, no man wants to hear, "Are you in?" Here at Gruen, we're pretty fond of the 1949 EVB Sampson ad, but Australian political advertising goes back even further. In 1925, election ads looked like this. Bloody women being all woman-like. That was an ad for Stanley Bruce, our 8th Prime Minister. Believe it or not, we ran that at double speed, and it's still like watching paint dry. I'll spare you the full 4 minutes, but I do want to show you the next bit. Yep, back then it was all about who could start the boats. Each week on Gruen Nation, we promise you the best and worst of global political advertising. Here's an American ad from last year.
This is small business. This is small business under the current tax code.
Pull.
Any questions? Any questions?
That little girl grew up to be Sarah Palin. Time to meet the panel from Leo Burnett, Todd Sampson, and from Network 10, Russell Howcroft. They're joined by former Liberal Minister Amanda Vanstone, the drums Annabelle Crabb, and K-Rudd's old media advisor Lachlan Harris. Welcome. Okay, last week on Gruen, we heard Kevin tell us this.
I know for sure that the old politics of negativity just won't work.
Which is why this week Labor launched 3 attack ads about Tony's alleged cuts. The first 2 were kind of familiar. The third was really familiar.
What are you hiding, Mr. Abbott? I remember when you were really aggressive, negative, angry about everything. Now you've just gone quiet. Talk about all the money you want to save. So what are you going to cut? Schools? My hospital's already stretched. What jobs are you going to cut? Teachers? Nurses? I just feel like you're hiding things. And I get the feeling that if you win, we lose.
And I'm shit scared. Put down the knife, then we'll talk. Labor loves an angry woman in a kitchen, has done since Whinging Wendy in 1987.
Mr. Howard, me and my family would like to ask you some real simple questions.
Like, why has Warwick Kappa got my haircut? For an ad that calls Tony aggressive, doesn't the woman in the new Labor ad seem a bit aggressive? Russell, will anyone identify with her?
Well, look, I'm assuming that she's a working mum. 65% of mothers are working, And I have to say, sadly, I think there will be a number of people that will relate to it because, of course, things are tough and they're reflecting how they're feeling about life. It worked. Whinging Wendy worked. And, of course, they've got a model in Whinging Wendy. They think this is worth a fly. And I think it will resonate with some, albeit it is frightening.
She's so sort of well-pressed and chop. She reminds me of the mother of the kid who your kid has just assaulted in the playground.
I mean, I'm not certain about the relatability. Like, this kind of regular person strategy is based on the notion that you're reflecting people. So people relate to the people in the ad, and therefore they relate to the ad. But to me, I don't know who they're targeting. It seems like sort of underfed, angry women with knives. I mean, she's... and you know what? It takes a lot of casting to get this right. And this just seems, to me, pretty aggressive, angry casting. And the narrative is weird. It's like she actually really misses Tony when he was angry and aggressive. She's like calling him back.
No. It is a very relatable scene. It absolutely is something that will resonate, not with everyone, I understand that, but there are people that are scared or they're unsure of the future, and this commercial will resonate with some of those people.
And it's a transition ad, right? And so it started before all the negative ads. It's asking the question, it's transitioning you to the full-on negative ad. They're going to go really hard in the answer ad, which was the, you win, he loses, the spotlight ad. That's the question. You can't ask a soft question and then have the answer, Abbott's a terrorist kind of thing. The question has
That's the first thing that came to your head.
I love you. Firstly, we're going to go with arsehole. And then you've gone, no, that's a bit hard.
But the transition, the tone of the transition has to fit the tone of the answer, and that's why it was a bit harsher than you were expecting.
Russell, I agree that negative ads work. Obviously they do. That's why the parties use them. And doubt is a great motivator. Well, are there going to be cuts? But the difference is Whinging Wendy was in response to a huge range of spending initiatives. And it's fair enough to respond by saying, where's the money coming from? What's this in response to? There haven't been any announcements about drastic cuts. So I think this is there.
I think that's supposed to be the point, isn't it?
I think they're playing on... They're playing on...
Look, I think there's another problem. The house is too tidy. There's no Margaret Ollie there.
Let's have a look at the house. I love the benchtop art direction, the carefully arranged tea towel, the phallic aggression of the baguette. But my favourite bit's got to be the kids. It's like they've been through 900 takes and can't cope anymore. Todd, could they look more bored and unhappy?
Yeah, I mean, that ad is just one step up from awful. And I think what saves it is that kid curling up like she's lost the will to live. You just get the feeling she's saying, looking at that woman saying, if you would just eat more, you'd remember your lines. Because she seems to be going over and over.
I mean, that's middle class, I think, when I look at that image. And that I think is quite interesting. And, she looks quite smart. I mean, they've overdone the makeup a little bit to make it look a little bit angrier. But it's a nice polo shirt. She looks fit. It's very middle class when I look at that.
It's middle class, Russell, but it's pretty poorly done. Like, jokes aside, it's poorly done. I think that we use set designers, we use directors, we use stylists, and that seemed... I mean, it's a lot of money to make it look that bad.
Well, no, I don't think that isn't what's going on. They haven't got very much money and they want to put all the money into media. So they do scratch it together and, it's probably one of the staffer's house, or it's his mum's house. That may be his mum.
That is a mum who I would never want to play hide and seek with.
I know.
What are you hiding? Whinging Wendy 2013 was cutting pretty hard with that knife. In a Sunday press conference, Kevin mentioned the word cut 57 times. Labor's painting Tony Abbott as a high-end kitchen appliance. He slices, he dices, he juliennes.
Tony Abbott is the Edward Scissorhands of Australian politics, the Edward Scissorhands of Australian politics. Tony Abbott is the Edward Scissorhands of Australian politics.
Ooh, topical. 23 years ago that came out, and showing the politician's usual firm grip on pop culture, Bill forgets that Edward was the hero of that movie. Labor's gone from a 3-word slogan to a 3-letter one, C-U-T. Annabelle, will it work?
And what you've seen in this campaign is, I think, Labor really floundering around with a couple of failed messages. Like, they started off with a new way and nobody knew which way the new way was, and then it's sort of been forgotten pretty much at the point we're at now. And then there was the sort of GST attack, which doesn't seem to have really gone anywhere. And the best shot they have in the locker is, what's this guy going to do? Like, would you expect that this guy will cut services and cut health and cut education and whatever? So that's what they're running with.
Generally, political ads don't appeal to our intellect, they appeal to our emotion, and this is doing that for us. I mean, it's basically using the metaphor of cut and injury and damage and using it over and over and over again. And the technique they're using is say. So they say it, then you see them doing it. And it's annoying, but it's actually persuasive.
Yeah, but they are trying to rationalise their argument as well. They do want to, you're right, they want it just to appeal to fear, but then they'll underpin it as best as they can with facts in order to try and, get you to, if you like, rationalise the message.
Labor's challenge is to turn cuts into reality. Work choices worked because it didn't mean work choices, it meant no overtime and no holiday loading, and that was real, and that's what Labor hasn't done. They haven't done it in that ad, certainly, and the challenge for the next 3 weeks is to turn cuts into reality, into things that matter.
Well, the Libs hit back with this ad.
There will be no carbon tax under the government I lead.
Okay, first lesson, don't let the Libs plan your birthday party because they will get you a shit cake. But I want to talk about this. Only the Liberals will get rid of Labor's carbon tax. Didn't Labor just get rid of Labor's carbon tax? Lachlan, what value is there for the Libs for just banging this drum again?
There's not a lot, and that's why, did you notice it was 3 years ago today was the opening line of that ad? What that means is, effectively, is that's a show me buy ad. When I say a show me buy, you create the ad in the hope that it's going to make the TV news, because that's where all the eyeballs come from for free. Tying Rudd to Gillard's legacy is just not working really well for them. They've got to tie Rudd to Rudd 1's legacy, his legacy from his first term. They're going to try and tie Rudd to boats, to bats, to debt. That's their kind of strategy. That was just, I think, an easy picking show me buy to try and win the news one night.
That ad's not really about the carbon tax, although tax is unpopular. That ad's about trust, and they're trying to link it to the lie and then saying you can't, because governments can win or lose on trust in elections, and they're trying to really push the trust thing, that you can't trust it. And I particularly like some of the executional elements. Like, I like the music. I think the music is so down and just somber. Depressing and somber. I really like the images they've got of Kevin smiling and so happy. And Kevin does have an issue with smiling, actually. He smiles a little bit too much, and he does have that kind of cat ate the canary face. So I think this is actually not bad. It's fairly well done, and I believe it was made before the switch as well.
Is that right? Yeah, I think the purpose of the ad is to tie Rudd into being happy about introducing the carbon tax. That's what it's all about. He says, I'm getting rid of it, I'm a hero. And this ad reminds them that he was very happy the day it got through Parliament.
Yeah, well, there's even a shot of Kevin kissing Julia as he tries to slide the poison into her mouth. Implying they were working closely together. After 3 years of the bitterness and the rancour, is anyone going to believe that they were working together?
I don't know. I thought about what she was thinking when this was happening. And part of her must have been thinking, the cameras are on you. You have to give me a smoocho in front of them, and you have to look friendly and decent. And as he got closer, she might have thought, hell, he's going to bite my ear off. So she was lucky to get out of that. I mean, but I think the point of it being included is to say this man will do anything in front of the cameras.
We have had 3 years of higher prices, but there's not much evidence linking them to the carbon tax that only came in last year. Todd, does evidence matter in campaign advertising?
Unfortunately, with a lot of political advertising, truth is the first casualty. They kind of work in half-truths, and they know that if they show facts and statistics in ads, then generally people will question it a lot less. And it's a bit rich from people that deal in persuasion to talk about this, but I guess in some ways we...
I was thinking that.
Yes. But in some ways we spin with style. It's just a bit blunt.
No, it's very, very strange. Yeah. It's very strange that facts don't have to be supported. So a lot of the advertising you couldn't run in the commercial world because the Trade Practices Act would come after you, and they would say, show us the evidence. And if you didn't have the evidence, well, then you'd be in all sorts of trouble.
But here, in this ad, the facts are the sort of secondary thing that sort of slipped in, right? So the headline thing is 3 years ago today, which is supposed to make you feel a bit like thinking about, 3 years, what's happened to... Ooh, yeah, bad stuff's happened in the last 3 years, right? So, and then after that, which is the headline part of the ad, then you slip in this, and as we all know, every single thing's gone up because of this tax, which is also implied is also 3 years old, which is not true.
But if you can prove that it's wrong, that is a vulnerability. In 2007, there was a Liberal ad that made claims about the number of Labor cabinet ministers who were union officials, and it was just technically wrong. It wasn't a big ad, and Costello got pulled up on it, and inside it was actually and it was a stumble. So
thereby getting him huge exposure for the ad.
Exactly. Yeah, but it was a stumble, and it didn't help with momentum, basically. But what you can't do is have a provably wrong fact.
Yes.
I would argue what they do is they take a tiny sliver of truth and they remove all the context and all the kind of detail and all the asterisks, and they just give you a tiny sliver of truth, and that's really
it's something they can justify.
Yeah, and that's what the whole campaign's really
I'm
about.
a little bit disturbed at how much both of your eyes lit up talking about it.
I am getting quite energised.
Up north, another force wade into the campaign.
There's too much jaw and too much war. It's time we brought Australians together and achieved something for ourselves and our children and made it the lucky country. Vote Palmer United.
Too much jaw and too much war. Everyone else is naming policies. Clive Palmer is naming pandas. Tony may have stolen New Hope from Star Wars, but Clive's the jaw Binks of this campaign. Actually, it turns out that's a Churchill quote. Amanda, is anyone going to recognise it, or will people just think he's had a stroke?
Look, I don't think so. He's mashed it up badly. What Churchill was saying in the 50s at the White House was, look, it's better to talk about things than just go to war and beat each other to death. Jaw, not war. Palmer gets them together and he said, don't do any of that. Just do something good for Australia. He doesn't tell you what. Just do something good for Australia. And he's got a twitch.
It's literally like he's about to say, there's too much jaw, there's too much war, and there's not enough ting-tang walla being...
I'll do my best. I mean, he probably doesn't even know it's a Churchill quote. He's thinking he's saying it like it's his own.
If you're going to do it, you have to say, as Churchill said, la la la. Otherwise, it's, well...
I just think the only way he could have possibly improved on that ad is just at the end to silently hold up a pawpaw. Not explain that
That
either.
would have been good.
Too much jaw, too much war, not enough pawpaw. Of course, if you want your election ad to appeal to everyone, there's only one question to ask. What would Poland do? What do Poland's political geniuses do when they want to maximise their electoral appeal? They pretend they're in an action movie, adding what every campaign needs: massive explosions and face-sucking CGI effects.
What would you do if the world was endangered?
The world is in huge danger. Chaos and unknown phenomena have surrounded the planet Earth.
The world needs a leader. People need a hope. The world needs Jacek Pająk. Soon on your electoral list.
Like most election ads, it was going so well until the moment you see the candidate. It's like Putin had a baby with Pee Wee Herman. This is the small picture, where we turn our attention to the little things. Tonight, daughters. According to Google, the top 5 K-Rudd personal search terms are wife, biography, birthday, brother and son. Tony Abbott's aren't too different, except that at number 1 is daughters. Francis and Bridget Abbott have been everywhere with their dad this campaign, trying to keep up on his morning runs, nodding behind him at press conferences, chaperoning him in public. They've been dubbed his weapons of mass distraction. Amanda, what do they bring to the campaign?
Oh, I think they bring a nice little sense of family. Here's a guy with girls, so he's keen to demonstrate that, you know, he's there with the girls. And I think it's not a bad thing myself.
He does this whole, you know, women problem? No way. I never leave home without two.
I think that families, I mean, politicians have been using families and their kids, you know, since the beginning. And I think that it's good for what they refer to as scripted criticism. So the kids can say things about their dad, like the daggy defense, and make their kind of weaknesses turn into strengths. It's like when you do an interview and someone says, what's your biggest weakness? And you say, well, I work too hard. Well, it's the same thing. They can also re-script the negatives in a positive way, and they're being used a lot in this campaign.
Gender is a very, very large issue in this campaign, much larger than it was in 07, 10, 4, probably in any campaign before, and that's why you're seeing the daughters play a role. You've got 2 blokes fighting it out to be PM in the very year when gender is a ginormous issue. And of course, I think the daughters are a part of that. I think they're incredibly effective message is that Abbott has raised these two beautiful daughters. They're well spoken, they're confident, they have a good relationship, they are vote winning machines. I don't think they're a distraction. I think they are an absolute vote winning machine, and I can see why they're rolling them out.
You say well spoken, but the two smile a lot but don't speak that much. And when it looks like they might say something, Tony tends to step in to shut it down.
What did you say to your dad?
Just another dorky dad moment, that's all.
I'm the only one who's allowed to say stupid things on camera. Bridget and Francis are on record as pro-gay marriage, more or less pro-choice, and not particularly religious. Lachlan, would letting them speak be a risk?
It's a risk to them. I think the reality is it's all upside for Abbott and his campaign at the moment, having his daughters there. And even if they'd criticised him then, to Todd's point, it would have worked for him. Raising a daughter who's capable of criticising you on national television means you know how to raise good kids.
I can understand how a father would look and think, I'm not going to let these girls be picked off by the media and say something that might be a little bit inconsistent with me and that be blown up and out of proportion, and suddenly the girl becomes the issue. So I think that's a protective father speaking over, no, you're not going to be used in a way that will allow you to be the centre of it.
Frances is fantastic because she's got this incredibly bad poker face. And so she actually comments without saying anything. She was the one in the background when the sex appeal comment was made, and her face is just brilliant. She's going, what?
Yeah. and Frances, credit where credit's due, because she was the one who said to Tony, get the budgie smugglers off.
They do tweet a lot about how proud they are of their dad. They hold his hand in public with a regularity that seems to be making some kind of point. And here they are gently massaging Tony's pecs and abs after the first debate. Stop it, girls. Wyatt Roy will be jealous.
It is weird, isn't it? Like, they're holding hands a lot, and hand-holding's either, like, affection or control, and I mean, I don't know, holding a 21-year-old's hand all the time, arm in arm. I mean, you have a 19-year-old daughter. Do you hold her hand in public, Russ?
No, Todd.
I think Todd's point about 19 is a really key part of it. They're just a little bit too old to be the normal kids on the campaign trail. In the end, you don't generally see adult kids hanging around with politicians on there. That would be a bit odd if you kind of, here's my 45-year-old son, you'd be like, why doesn't he have a job? And so they're a little bit too old to be the kids on the campaign, but they're not quite old enough to be the adults who's not there. And that's where a bit of that kind of, they're in the kind of creepy zone, you know what I mean? Where it's like, where do they sort of sit?
I really don't agree. If you're in a campaign and you're going along amongst a crowd, it's just so easy to peel one person off from another, and that could easily happen to the daughters, and Abbott's obviously determined to not allow that to happen.
They're not in Afghanistan.
No.
They're at a shopping centre.
No, but look, I've had experience with media. I know what they're like. Someone would easily say, look, if you can get one of them peeled off, just run a couple of questions by them. You'll only have a couple of minutes, maybe 30 seconds, 60 seconds. Have a go and see what you can do. I wouldn't trust the media behind a glad wrap if they were manacled.
He's having a problem.
Well, there go our reviews. Jessica Rudd's pretty visible too. She was there when Kevin signed on as Prime Minister. She was his date at the Press Gallery midwinter ball. She shows off his granddaughter, Josephine, wherever possible. When asked about following Dad around in the 2007 campaign, she said this.
My job was to make sure he had clean undies and, you know, that he wasn't wearing yesterday's tie, and that we went to the gym and went for a walk and ate.
OK, leaving aside the mental image of Jessica checking if Kev's undies are dirty, Todd, are daughters the new political wives?
Oh, no, I think it's embarrassing, although I can't see Teresa checking Kevin's underwear. I just can't see that as part. No, I think they're props that talk. I think they're being used, the children are being used for political ends, and some of them like it, and they don't really have an option. And that's why they bring them out. It's a political tactic. It's not because they love them and they want them to be part of it. If they love them so much, they keep them away from it, because the spotlight in a political environment is pretty harsh.
Jessica Rudd also plays quite an important social media role, bouncing off her dad in public, you know, and giving that exchange a kind of a genuineness that you can't fake.
Yeah, they've become like an escape hatch. So when things go wrong, you refer to your kids, who are kind of like like ATMs of credibility, really, aren't they? I mean, it's like, okay, well, I'm being a bit daggy, so therefore I use my daughter to say I'm daggy, or I've misstepped here, so my daughter then says that's okay. And in Rod's case, he's using her as a social media advisor.
They actually do play quite an important role to kind of take the pressure out of situations. In the end, there's a lot of frustration on campaigns. Things get very, very heated and very tough, and there's no one better kind of to basically take the pressure out and let someone relax than someone who knows them really well, their kids or their spouse. And they play a real role in that sense, and the advice they give is real because sometimes they can, I guess, say things that other people probably can't say or say it in a way that they'll be listened to.
Rudd also has two boys, Marcus and Nicholas, pretty much the same age as Tony's girls. Ooh, double date. They're both employed on the campaign, but you wouldn't know it, which is what I don't get. Why would you show off your daughters when everyone knows it's sons that make you look good?
My son Hugh, the second oldest of my sons. The other two are too busy to be here today.
The pitch tonight, we're celebrating political sex appeal. Plenty of adult film stars have run for office over the years, including France's self-styled porn dissident Celine Barra, and as we showed you last time on Gruen Nation, California's Mary Carey.
I'm going to get rid of the car tax and put a tax on breast implants instead. I will legalize gay marriage, and I'll make sure everyone who files for unemployment gets jury duty.
Jury duty. Jury duty. Was the defendant acquitted? No, but he did get off. Not many traditional politicians try to win votes by playing up their sex appeal, although Brazilian Mayor Eduardo Leite didn't lose too many supporters when he posted this pic in social media last year. Ooh. And Polish pop singer Katarzyna Szolek used this billboard when she ran for Warsaw Council in 2010. Tony Abbott was asked to comment on that and his head exploded. What is it with Polish politicians pushing the envelope? We don't know, but we do know that in 2011, Democratic Left Alliance candidate Katarzyna Lenart went beyond the call of duty to get her party some attention. That's how Joe Hockey's going to release the Liberal Party costings. Here's what her boyfriend thought about that idea when she told him. Which brings us to the pitch. For tonight's challenge, we asked two agencies to make ads for Kevin Rudd and Tony Abbott using sex as the theme. Can they do it? Please welcome from In Ocean, Mike Morrison, and from VCCP, Dean Hunt. Welcome. All right, Mike, how did you get in the mood?
Well, Tony is a very good-looking rooster, but we decided to go downstairs. He's very well appointed, and we found a couple of people that were willing to talk on Tony's behalf.
Let's have a look.
I've heard a lot of people say that Tony isn't sexy. You know, big ears and all that. Well, to those people, I say you're wrong. Tony's sexy, Tony's sexy.
I've known Tony for probably 6 years now, and I can tell you what, that man oozes sex appeal.
You know, for his age, he's got lovely, soft skin, and it always amazes me how warm he is. Always asking how you are, you know, giving you a little squeeze. That's Tony.
Yep. When it comes to politicians, they don't come any sexier than Tony. And I'm blessed to have got close to him. Very close.
Vote 1.
Tony Abbott. Tony Abbott.
He's the sexy choice.
Authorised by T. Abbott, Liberal Party candidate. Spoken by Sonny, Bluey and Tweety.
Well done. Good job. Good job. Dean, call promise or soft call promise?
We realised very quickly we didn't have the sexiest man for the job, but we thought maybe that's not a bad thing.
Let's have a look.
Leaders. Charismatic, powerful, sexy. But can they be trusted? When it comes to the future of our great nation, we don't need another actress-loving, sax-blowing, shirtless-riding, hotel-partying, Pinot-drinking politician. We need a man with his mind on the job, not his mind on the job. Australia deserves a leader who will ensure that our economy remains strong, our environment is cared for, and our technology is globally competitive. Our Prime Minister should wear a suit, not Speedos. And Australia deserves a leader sexy enough to get the job done. Kevin Rudd, sexy enough.
All right, good job both. Let's see how the panel saw it. Russell?
I really like the idea of Kevin Rudd being sexy enough, but I can't go past a budgie coming out of Tony Abbott's Speedos. It'll be with me forever.
Annabelle, what did you think?
Oh, look, I love demonstrating that Tony can pull the birds, but I have to go a different way. I'm going for the Rudd ad just because the payoff at the end was just so beautiful. Well done.
Lachlan, is Kevin sexy enough for you?
Look, I got to back the budgie smuggler ad, I got to say. I thought it was funny and it got a good laugh out of the crowd, so I really liked it.
Amanda?
I like the budgie smuggler ad. It is funny and it does get a laugh, and, you know, the budgie at the end coming out of the budgie smuggler is pretty good. But I think the Labor ad, if you can call it that, the Rudd ad, is just a little bit more realistic because it's honest and says sexy enough. You can read that another way, saying not that much.
Todd, it's the tiebreaker. Which one did you prefer?
The first ad scarred me for life, so I'm going for the second one.
It was close. Congratulations. There we go. There we go.
Thank you very much.
That's how our panel saw it. You can have your say on Twitter or Facebook, or just get out the Barry White records and scream some homemade politician porn on the inside of your eyelids. Now, back on the horse. This is On the Trail, where we saddle up and head out for the ride. After keeping himself in check through the early campaign, Tony Abbott let it all hang out last week with a flurry of awkward moments, from suppository gate to his suggestion that gay marriage is a fashion, and his enthusiasm for the sex appeal of one of his candidates, a gaffe that prompted this response from Christopher Pine.
I wish people would describe me as having sex appeal, but they don't.
They don't, and they never will. Don't be sad, Christopher. Lots of people think you're sexy, like Wyatt Roy. What interests us is not gaffes, but how campaigns deal with them, the rules of engagement. Lachlan, in 2007, you had to handle when Peter Garrett basically said that when Labor got in, they were going to change everything back again. Is there a panic button you push in that situation?
There goes all my therapy. No, look, when there's a really bad gap that happens, there's two key things you've got to do, basically. You've got to be reasonable and consistent. And both campaigns have these things called quick reaction units. They have different names in every campaign. And what they're looking for is negatives like that. And the moment they see a negative, they kind of try and simplify it and clarify it down to its thing, get a transcript, and then broadcast it out to everyone. That's the job on the offensive side. On the defensive side, it's the opposite. So you'll do something called a quick reaction brief, where you literally will, within 10 to 15 minutes, have a full transcript of what's happened, a set of, background responses and a suggested response to how it's happened, because it's not about being tricky and changing the agenda and that sort of stuff, not in the first instance anyway. It's just about making sure everyone says roughly the same thing with about the same tone, and that's how you take the air out of it.
Wouldn't Tony Abbott's team be like gaff-tastic? Wouldn't they be like, their response team would be amazing. They'd be all over it and well prepared.
Yeah, they would, and I think they actually did quite well in the thing.
Yeah.
You saw that, the consistency. Gaffes in the end are meant to crystallise pre-existing concerns in the community. Right. So it's actually the pre-existing concerns that determine how bad it is, and if you crystallise a big concern, you're in big trouble.
The fear of the gaffe, of course, explains why people are speaking very slowly in this campaign.
Which is why people are asleep.
I think the amount of focus. I think the amount of focus on gaffes, though, is it relates to the quality of the political discourse. I mean, if we are spending a lot of time worrying about mistakes that they make, then clearly the political discussions are not that good.
I think the reason that the parties have these teams is, you're right, consistency is required, but the question then follows, why is it required? Well, it's required because the media want to sell their papers or want you to watch their television station that night or get on their webpage. And you're not going to do that if someone says, ho-hum, everything was boring and dull today. They're looking for colour, controversy and conflict. And so you need to avoid that happening. Politics is a team game. No one votes for a crowd of lunatics that they know are lunatics anyway to run their country. You actually want a team doing it because it's a serious business. And so you need, in your response, to show that you can play as a team, you are all singing the same song, and you do not provide the media with a smorgasbord and say, hey, out of these 10 comments, which is the worst one you'd like to pick on and blow up and put on the news tonight?
In many ways, the risk of a gaffe, you know, of the sort of common or garden variety is not that it necessarily damages your image in the long term, although some of them do that. It's actually an opportunity cost for that day, because if the evening news is full of Tony Abbott calling a candidate sexy, then it's not full of Tony Abbott announcing, you know, $50 million in funding for the local hospital or whatever. I mean, whatever you've done that day will get drowned out. And one day's campaigning is really expensive because there aren't that many of them over the course of the campaign.
Although, in response to that, I didn't notice much of Rudd's story that day out either. So there were people saying, was that deliberate on Abbott's behalf, in order to soak up the news that night, to take it away?
Double bluff.
To take it away.
Are you saying he's some kind of suicide gaffer? Tony's sex appeal comment led to this press conference later the same day.
I was a bit exuberant today. A bit exuberant today.
Somebody's using their word of the day toilet paper. Joe Hockey told ABC Radio Tony was being happy and exuberant. Christopher Pine described it as, you guessed it, exuberant. All singing from the same hymn sheet. Russell, how do you rate the exuberant defence?
Well, I suspect that Tony Abbott's school report when he was 9 years old in grade 4 probably said Tony is a very exuberant character. And I do think that does describe the sort of cat that he is.
He's also very good at PE, but must show his workings in maths.
Yeah, all of that, you know? And I do think it's something that he would, that would have been said about him over a long period of time and that his colleagues would think is the case. And we just see, and we do see it every day, of course, because he's up at 5 a.m, exuberantly getting on his bicycle. So I think that it's something which does go to his character. I think people tick it off. They say that does make sense. And I think in the end, this is a very, very small deal.
I think if you're offended by Tony Abbott's sex appeal gaffe, then you were never going to vote for him in the first place. And in fact, I think he probably got more votes. I mean, remember Kevin Rudd in the strip club? That was okay, and it broadened his appeal. Although I must say, Kevin Rudd had a better defence. He said he was drunk.
But when really serious things happen, I remember in 2004 in the campaign, there was the bombing of the Australian embassy in Jakarta, and it was just after the Iraq War. It was a really contentious issue, whether it was caused by our presence in Iraq and that sort of stuff. And I have a really clear memory of the National Secretary running into the room and saying, and they have a system set up where they can send a text message to literally every single person in the campaign. And just the text message went out, this is what's happened, do not comment, refer to the National Secretary for comment, or to the campaign headquarters for comment. And like when things go really badly wrong, there is actually a requirement to shut everyone down straight away, and campaigns have the technology and the capacity to do that.
There are rules of gaffe engagements for both sides. The sex appeal line was the only one Kevin Rudd commented on last week, even commenting on the fact that he was commenting.
I've decided that it's worth commenting on. I know we normally say, well, that's for others to think about and others to respond to. But this one is pretty odd.
Note to Kevin's minders, try not to choose a backdrop that makes him look like a tool. Labor hasn't been without its own problems. Last week, Kevin had to sack 2 candidates. Then Bill Shorten admitted he'd only heard of the NT plan a day before it was announced. And on Saturday, Kevin Rudd thanked loyal Holden workers for their lifetime commitment to Ford. Yeah, he also thinks this is spics and specs. Amanda, why don't both sides pounce on every misstep?
Well, I think the main reason is the election's about getting your message out, and you should not be distracted from that by the other side, either because they try and goad you into it by saying nasty things to you, or because they say something stupid and it presents you with an opportunity to kick ahead. Why bother kicking the head when you can kick a goal and sell your policy?
And the potency of a gaffe can be diluted by the other side actually joining the fray, because it becomes just more political, he said, she said kind of political stuff. A really bad gaffe, you don't do anything. When things go really badly, when there's a leadership spill on the other side, you are ducking for cover, you don't say a thing because they're killing themselves, and so you don't need to, and you make it less effective by getting involved. I think probably Rudd made a calculated judgment that he needed to take the risk. Whether he was right or not, I don't think is clear, but that gaffe was more effective when it was just Abbott being Abbott.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty basic strategy. I think Rudd looked at that and said, okay, well, you choose gaffes that suit your ends, your political ends, and in this case, there are more women than there are gay people, so he focused on the women issue. I think it's strategy.
Abbott was still dealing with sex appeal blowback this week. At a joint press conference on Monday, Fiona Scott described the original comment as a charming compliment between friends. And Tony said this.
And at the risk of exciting anyone, can I just say, obviously from that answer, she ain't just a pretty face, okay?
Yes, Scott.
Oh, stop helping. Where's your daughter? Let her talk. Don't worry, Tone. You're not at the risk of exciting anyone. Meanwhile, Kevin didn't comment on Tony's gay marriage quote, but Labor tried to exploit it on Facebook. Where did they get the pic of Tony looking like a flasher?
I think he looks like a spy.
Oh, well, see?
Wow. Yes, he's undercover. He's got a gun under that jacket.
That's not a gun in my
Lachlan, do both teams have unflattering photo experts?
Yeah, they have opposition. You do opposition research, and whether you're in government, in the 3 years leading up to a campaign, they will be looking into I'm not talking about dirt digging. I'm just talking about what's on the public record. What have they done that's bad? What have they done that's good? Looking for things that they can put into a context and make it kind of take, like we were saying before, take a slither of truth, present it in the most unflattering light possible, and try and win votes out of it. And they're thinking about that constantly between campaigns.
Were you the victim of this, Amanda? Did they have a file of Amanda Vanstone photos that came out for certain reasons?
Well, I'm not the most photogenic person in the world, so I'm an easy mark. They have to do a bit better than that to show themselves to be professional. But when I first got into Parliament, one of the Labor ministers had a person who was constantly referred to as Mrs. Muck. And her job was to go and find muck on people. I mean, it is a standard practice that if you think there's something to find on someone, you'll find it out because the public ought to know if there's something bad.
Yeah. Really there's a skill in finding a bad photo that's not too bad. Because if it's really bad, it looks mean. So they don't want to do that. And they can always use probably the greatest persuasion tool ever created, Photoshop. And they often just take colour out, make it black and white, because black and white is much more sinister. They can desaturate. They can do lots of things in Photoshop. So, I don't know about Tony carrying a gun, but that is a pretty creepy photo.
He's got a lot more clothes on than he normally has. I think that's what's unusual.
Oh, is that what freaks us out?
Yeah. Budgie smugglers, no problem. Trench coat, what's going on under there?
It's okay, it's just his daughters. I just meant they were there. I didn't mean... And Wyatt Roy. Of course, if you want an unflattering photo of Kevin Rudd, you just have to hand him a camera.
Here we go. We'll do a selfie. Selfie. Yeah, do a selfie.
That's all we have time for tonight. Please thank our panel, Russell, Annabelle, Lachlan, Amanda and Todd. Before we go, today pretty much marks the halfway point of campaign 2013. Wow, hasn't it flown by? And I think we all agree how it's gone so far.
Just fucking hopeless.
Come on. I'm sure he's just being exuberant. We'll leave you tonight with another election ad that sells its candidate with sex in anyone else's hand. What you're about to see would be some kind of batshit crazy joke. But with this man, too much self-delusion is never enough. We'll see you next week.
И вот что я вам скажу. Прежде всего, нужно помнить о безопасности.
Да, доктор, я понимаю.
Тем более в первый раз.
А может, мне и не надо это?
Надо. И правильно, что хотите по любви. Я полностью поддерживаю ваш выбор.
Правда?
С ним будет безопасно.